Do you agree that to achieve a good education system, we need to consider equality first? I believe that most of you will say yes. I am sure that you will also agree that our education has not already been equal. As evidence, we often blame our government because we see that students in the cities get more fancy buildings and infrastructure if compared to students in the rural areas. How if I say that this concept of equality actually lowers our education quality? I often heard some people say that our government hasn't provided any equality yet in our education by saying, there are still many children out there who do not get opportunities to study at school. From that, I finally know that most of us do not really understand what it means by equality in education, because it's not merely about the same opportunities, but it covers every aspect in education. Therefore, I, Elvida Glodia Ardiani, want to invite you to discuss what equality actually is, so that we can understand how this concept of equality can hamper our education quality, and why we should focus more on the other thing called equity to reach a good education system. Both equality and equity are about fairness, but they are different in use. In Bahasa Indonesia, we only have one word to exemplify equality and equity, which is setara. So people often misinterpret them. Equality means that every student has the same resources and opportunities to attend school, regardless of their background. Not only that, it also covers the same fundings for all students and schools, the same quality of and abundance of materials and infrastructure or facilities, the same quality of instructions, and many more. One example is that a kid of a farmer who also has the same chance to go to school like a kid of a businessman, or when every school in Indonesia is given the same amount of funds by the government to operate. So this concept of equality ensures that everything should be similar. On the other hand, equity tends to focus on what students and teachers actually need. Students have different abilities in understanding the materials, and they need different supports from the teachers. The supports may vary because this concept focuses more on the outcomes. No matter what kind of support is given to each student, as long as they can reach the same goals, it will not be a problem. Indonesian government has already tried to fulfill the equality in education, but it doesn't really work. In fact, our government has given 45.3 million students opportunities to study at school, but there are still many children out there who also do not get that. In line with the concept of equality, our government has tried to provide some similar things in fundings, facilities, instructions, and so on, like what I've mentioned before. However, it becomes an obstacle because it is too generalized and strict to the rule. If we keep in mind that Indonesia is a country with diversity, it would not happen, right? Actually, there is one way that we can use to reach a wider number of students, which is implementing the concept of equity. Each region in Indonesia has different needs. If we only focus on how we can give the same things to all schools and students in Indonesia, we cannot reach more students and help them to study at school. We and our government are too focused on giving the same things to all students and schools in Indonesia. We barely think whether the decision suits our condition or our needs or not, whether it brings advantages for us or vice versa. One real example is when the government brought up the idea about establishing full-day school and appointing Saturday as a free day in 2017. If we only consider the concept of equality, then most schools cannot follow the rule. One example is in Padang. There were some elementary and junior high schools who still applied dual shifts per day due to the lack of facilities. If the government had forced them to follow the rule, they would have need much money to add more facilities there. However, if we also think about the concept of equity, then we can use the money to reach more students and help them to study at school, because we can see that schools in Padang, those schools in Padang have already maximized the use of facilities that they have. So as long as they can reach the same goals, the difference doesn't matter. One more thing, I've heard a story from Butet Manurung, who gives an alternative education for indigenous people in remote areas in Indonesia. She said that everything should not be equal, because the most important thing is that students has the same chance to study. If we only focus on giving the same thing, our education will not be better. Equality is important, but if we only stick to it, we cannot improve our education quality. We should keep in mind that everything good should not always be equal. This also applies in education. Both we and the government should consider the concept of equity first, because focusing on equality only increases similarities rather than prioritizing the quality. Thank you.